Hey YouTube, Shelka04 here. So today we're going to talk about the tips and tricks and things I ran into while building my AR15 pistol upper. And hopefully I'll save you some time. I'm going to jump right into it because this might be a lengthy video. So the first thing I did was I did the ejection port cover here. So this is a pin, and on the end of the pin there's a C-clip. It's right there. That C-clip is as small as a gnat's ass. And my suggestion is that, now you don't need a special tool, you don't need anything really to attach it. It clips on pretty easily. The issue is dropping and or losing the thing. And I did that. I didn't lose it. I dropped it on the floor, and it took me a few minutes to find it. But in hindsight, what I suggest you do is either do it over a white sheet, or maybe standing in the shower with something over the drain, so obviously the pin or the clip doesn't go down there. But long story short, if you drop something that's that big and black, you might have a problem. So then, once the clip was on the pin, I slid the pin in through with the cover on into about here, actually about there. Then I came at it from this direction with the spring. I twisted the spring and pushed the pin through. That was one of the easier things to do. Again though, don't lose that clip. Let's talk about the Delta spring. A lot of people talk about wanting a special pair of ring pliers to open up that spring. And I didn't want to get involved in that. That was going to be another trip to the store for a tool that I was going to use for about 5 seconds. So what I discovered is a nice pair of small gauge needle nose pliers. The ends will fit in the hole, or the holes on that spring clip just fine. So you can get the springs on there. Use your needle nose pliers to open that up a little, and that'll mount up on that nut just fine. So that covers that. Let's talk for a bit about the front of the upper. Now, the flash suppressor, or the muzzle device, whatever you call it, the issue I ran into when I was speccing out the parts was my vendor did not have the crush washer in stock. Besides, they wanted $6 for the thing, I think. So my issue was, if I went with another vendor solely for that crush washer, that was going to be $6, and then the shipping, you're looking at probably another $6. That turned into a $12 adventure. So my first thought was, I'll go to Home Depot and buy a regular split lock washer. When I put that on and then tried to tighten up the muzzle device, the flat part here, which is supposed to be down, and the reason it's supposed to be down is so that it doesn't kick up any dirt when you're firing in the prone position. But anyway, when I put the regular lock washer on, which is a lot thicker than what I've got on there now, the flat spot was over here in the 9 o'clock position. So obviously, as I said, that lock washer was too thick, too wide. Now they make another kind of lock washer called it's either an internal or an external star lock washer, and on this one, the internal tooth, it's got little offset teeth around the inside of it that as you squeeze down, those teeth sort of flatten out and create the locking, the tension, if you will. That works great. So as you see, everything's timed up. The internal star lock washer is where it needs to be, and that was a 35-cent item. Now the one thing I will say is, because I went with sort of a Wang brand armorer's tool, it was a little tight here. But this is just I think it was a 3/4 open-end wrench that I used to secure that. That was no big issue. What else can I tell you? Now let's talk about the sling swivel adapter. There's a pin or rivet that they supply with it. A lot of people get really freaked out and talk about a special flaring tool or finding a brake pad rebuilding specialist who's got again, a special flaring tool to deal with that. What I wound up doing was using a nail set, like a carpenter would use, to slightly dimple that, and then I rotated the swivel up out of the way and put just that little bit in the corner of a vise and squeezed it down and flattened it out the rest of the way, and that works fine. That's great. Now, let's talk for a minute about the front sight tower, or the front sight base. The sight post that's in there is your standard sight post. The problem is that this is an F-marked front sight base. Let's just call it front sight from here on out. Is that all right? Anyway, this is an F-marked, and I had ordered an A2 one, and there's a difference in height of 4/100ths of an inch between the two. Now, a solution would be, this one is, as I said, 4/100ths of an inch higher than the A2 base, or A2 sight. When I put the post in, I would suggest putting a little grease inside on the threads, because you're really going to have a hell of a time later lubricating that. I used a toothpick basically to push down the detent, and then spun the post in by hand. We'll go back to how I'm going to deal with the difference of that 4/100ths of an inch screw up on my vendor's part later, when I'm going to make another video about dealing with my vendor and that hassle. Now let's talk about the gas tube. It occurred to me that the shorter this distance, the harder it is to get the gas tube in, because the angle from here to there increases. So in a lot of videos, you'll see people sliding their gas tubes in from the front, and that doesn't work with a barrel of this length, or shorter probably. But the solution is, in my case, to fish the gas tube from this side forward. It takes a little finagling, but if you do it, you can do it without bending your gas tube at all. So let's talk about the actual mounting of the barrel onto the upper receiver. There's there are people out there who say you want to coat those two surfaces, since they're different metals, obviously aluminum and steel. You want to coat those two surfaces with a dielectric grease, so you don't have electrolysis between the two elements. I went that route. I got the special grease. As I said, there are people who say that you don't get enough electrolysis between the two to worry about it. Anyway, I covered the two mating surfaces with grease, put the barrel on, and then tightened up the castle nut as best I could by hand. Then what I did, oh, and I'm sorry, we got to back up for a minute. Obviously, this is before the gas tube went in. So with the castle nut in there hand tight, I found a drill bit that matched the diameter of the gas tube, and I put that drill bit in one of the slots on the castle nut into the gas port area. And when I put the drill bit in, sort of sticking out, it was at an angle. It was out like this. I then came at it with my armorer's wrench and the torque wrench and tightened it up, and as I did, that drill bit then went parallel with the barrel. That's how I knew the slot in the nut was timed up. A lot of people do inspection from the rear and keep, ooching it little by little, and when they don't see any of the castle nut in the way, they go with that. But I think the drill bit method is probably one of the easiest and best things to do. So let's talk about the back of the receiver. The forward assist came pretty much all assembled. From what I can recall, I had to put the spring on. Now, this one's a little hard because you sort of wish you had a third hand. What I did though was I tapped the pin in partially, and I don't use any of these pin aligners or any of that. We'll discuss that in another video I'm going to make about the tools. But I tapped the pin in just enough to get it started, and then I held the upper receiver with my left hand and the plunger in, and then tapped at the pin from this side with the jeweler's hammer. And when it was flush, I released the tension on the pin. I'm sorry, on the plunger, and as you can see, it works. Now let's talk for a bit about the rear sight. This ring here is actually made up of two separate discs. The lower disc has about 36 holes in it, and that's what gives you the click as you rotate when you're doing your sight adjustment. The upper disc is the one that has the numbers on it, and then I don't know, they both have serrations on it so that you can handle it. Anyway, what you wind up doing is using a small set screw to attach these two. I advise you in the pre-assembly stage not to put any thread lock on that set screw, because unless you are really, really lucky, you are not going to time that up correctly. So what you have to do when you're going to time it up later is you lower the entire sight down. Then you remove the set screw. There's an access hole from the top. You go in through the access hole from the top, remove the set screw again with the thing completely lowered, and then on the other side where it says, what, 300, 600, you bring that face around so that it's flat on that side, and then you come at it with your set screw. That will be zeroed for your mechanical zero. That's where you want it to be. Now, one other thing to keep in mind is when you're screwing the tower down with this, when you bring it all the way down, there's a spring that comes up from the bottom, and you can see it's held in by this pin here. Again, they talk about a special tool to hold that spring in place. Now, what I had thought about doing was taking like a campfire match and cutting it in half and going on either side of the spring to push it down, and then tapping the pin. But what I wound up doing, instead of getting involved with that, was I just used my smallest punch, and I held the spring down from the inside and tapped the pin in, and it worked fine. So you don't need that special tool, basically, is what I'm saying. The last thing I'll cover is the spring in up top that holds the actual sight under tension. That's a flat spring that's sort of shaped like an arc. All right. Now, if you watch the Brownells video, to me it looked like they were putting the spring in shaped like a U, like this. So, figuring Brownells knew what they were doing, or that I was interpreting the video correctly, I put the spring in that way, and then put the adjuster on the side. Then, when I actuated the sight up here, basically because that spring wasn't keeping anything under tension, it worked its way out. So now the dilemma that I had was, this was all mounted up, everything was all in place, and I've got the spring in my hand. So what do? What I discovered is, if you rotate the sight into this position, like a V, it creates enough of a gap that you can then ooch that spring clip from the back underneath, and then it's, basically tension holds it in place. I used a small punch to finish putting it the rest of the way until it fit into its little socket there, but basically that's how that works. Let me think. I think that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, please subscribe to my channel, and we'll talk to you later. Oh, and if you're interested in how I deal with that sight tower issue up front, please watch my next video. Thanks. Schalke04 out. Bye.